So, Tony and Richard, welcome to XpoNorth Digital Shorts. Very excited to have you two very successful and intimidatingly creative producers with us today. Can you tell the XpoNorth audience who you are and what you do?
Sure. Richard, do you want to go first or should I?
You go for it.
Okay. So my name is Tony Wood and I co-run Buccaneer Media with Richard Tulk-Hart, and we're a production company based in London, but with an eye to the international stage. We predominantly make drama, but we're not averse to looking at some unscripted content, and we also have a view that a script is a script is a script, and so we're sort of generically neutral in terms of our tastes. We'll go for anything with a script that we all happen to like. My background is that I've been producing drama for far too many years. I worked under Phil Redmond at Brookside to start with, then spent a long time at Granada, which was the most instructive period of my life, I think. Then some time as an executive producer in BBC drama before producing the Lockstock TV spin-off with Guy Ritchie and Matthew Vaughan, which was an experience. And then I was at ITV as head of continuing dramas for the Network Centre for a time before running Coronation Street, then off to Lyme, where I accidentally invented The Only Way is Essex with some other people, and then Buccaneer, and that's where we are.
Brilliant. There's so many stories in that. We might have to do a part 2 about how you accidentally created The Only Ways and all those things. But thank you very much, Tony. We're really happy to have you here. And Richard.
Well, you kindly introduced me as a creative. I would say I want to be creative. Tony is very much that person. My background is in the international space, putting together shows and distribution. I've come from more a background of the large corporate world, having worked at IMG, Fremantle, Miramax, and most recently A&E, where I ran the international business from London. I joined Buccaneer pretty recently, although Tony and I have spoken to each other for a long time, primarily because of the creative, getting closer to it. To say that I'm not a creative is a bit unfair on myself, probably.
It is.
I do love it, and I do get involved in it. And Tony and I are having a lot of fun working together. And as Tony said, putting that international spin on things and being able to put shows together in different ways these days is, I think, something that as announcements come out, you will see that we're doing pretty well.
It's really exciting. And for Buccaneer Media, I know that your scope is quite wide in terms of what the kind of content you're interested in, but is there a thread or a theme or something that motivates you that is really at its core?
Can I answer that? I'd say for me, it's all about authorship, really, and it's about the connection with the talent behind the piece. 9 times out of 10, it's that. We took the view very early on that we would seek to work with people we hadn't worked with before, and try and introduce some people to drama in the English language for the first time. Then try and encourage some novelists to dramatize their own work, and so now we're working with a lot of playwrights. We're working with a lot of very young writers. Interestingly, we're working with a lot of very young female writers, which was an area we found ourselves in kind of way before the clarion call from the broadcasters in the name of equality was sent out. And I think that as a company, our sensibilities were really geared towards the kind of work that we were seeing from interesting young female voices. So we have a lot of that. We have one poet working for us, and we have a whole slew of writers, if that is the right word, from across Europe who tend to work in their own language, but have started to work with us in English, and that's been very exciting.
That's so great. I have to say, you have to love a production company that works with poets. Your process sounds so wonderful and supportive of the artists that I am seriously excited that you're more in my neck of the woods soon with one of your productions. And I'm curious if you can talk about what brings you to Scotland for one of your shows.
Richard.
Yeah, I think that's unfair to land me with that one, but I do a bit, considering this is a show you've worked on for a long time.
Oh, okay.
I have to say too, this is for our XpoNorth audience. You're getting something hot off the presses, because this at the moment, I think we're saying that the show Bringing You to Scotland is in its early stages.
Sure. Sorry, I was just conscious that I was talking too much, so I thought I'd pass the baton a bit. So this is a show that we've been working on with Irvine Welsh, and I've been working on it for a long time, for years, and it's an adaptation of one of his novels. It's the first time that he will ever have adapted one of his novels himself for television. Wow. That's pretty exciting. Can I ask, sorry to interrupt, but can I ask, that's so great. I've written a book and I would have loved to adapt it. So is that a choice that you really stood behind, that you could see that he had the vision to adapt it? Or is it something that it came from him that he wanted to do? How did that come about? It was never a question that he wouldn't. He was always up for it. We have a lot of novels on our slate, and we're finding ourselves kind of gravitating towards that more and more, I think. And I also think that existing IP is something that the networks are looking for a lot of the time. So commercially that's made sense, but with this particular one, by and large, we've looked for people other than the novelists to adapt their own material. Interestingly, we've spoken with a lot of novelists about adapting somebody else's material, but with this one, and we have another one that Rose Tremaine did for us, a decade had passed since they wrote the novel, and in both those instances they felt they had something new to say about it, and the thing with Irvine was that this novel had never really left his mind, and so he wanted to go back into it. And what's very interesting about the process that we've been through is that as a result of it, he's now writing a sequel to it.
Wow, yeah. Fascinating. Yeah. That's really fascinating.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the other thing to say about it is that it's the novel itself, and just because of sensitivity around the broadcaster who hasn't announced it, I don't really want to get into too much detail yet, out of respect for them. But the novel itself has 2 time frames in it, and operates in 2 very, very different locations. And we originally intended playing out the novel in a relatively straight manner, but it became a very, very big show, and it became very difficult to sell it. And so what we did was we took the Edinburgh side of the story, and instead of having 2 time frames, we kind of anatomized the novel and took it was Edinburgh and the other place, and we kind of took them and played them in the chronology. And so this first season is all in Edinburgh, and I think the way that we've been working on it, we've now found other stories that will keep us in Edinburgh for longer than the novel would have done. So we're doing that. we're doing it with, this is revealing a secret, with Dougray Scott, who is
Love
he's so brilliant, Dougray, and
him.
he's co-producing on it as well, and he's just been a joy to work with. We've become very close, as has Irving, by the way. Irving has been the most collaborative person I've ever worked with. And in fact, Dougray and I were speaking about this last night, and the fact that we're going to need, we want it to be very Scottish, and so we're already kind of beginning to think about ensuring that as many HODs as possible will come from Scotland.
Fantastic.
I think it makes sense. We made the third season of our show Marcella in Belfast because a story took us out of London, and the crew there were all they were all from Belfast, all from Northern Ireland, and it was one of the best experiences I've had in terms of working directly with a crew, and it was so creative, and the sense of place that we got from there was immense, and so we absolutely want to do the same thing with Edinburgh.
I think that's really important. You know, in terms of people's the energy that they put into a story and the feeling of a crew when you're actually in a place and they have an investment in the place that you're filming in, I can imagine it kind of shifts the production a little bit towards being a little bit even more intense and kind of more of the intent.
Yeah,
there.
I think so. We ended up with, I mean, Marcella is an interesting show because it was always about detail, and so the cutting room is always kind of that's somewhere you're in for a long period of time, and it's a high tempo exercise because I think it has more edits per minute than anything I've ever worked on. And what we found in Belfast was that you explored the city in a different way because of that. The detailing was brilliant, and you know, the first two series were in London, so I had a very strong emotional connection with London. But Belfast, I didn't really know, but the other people did, and we gained a show that I didn't quite expect, and that was brilliant.
That is so fabulous. I have to say too, given the nature of the climate now with COVID-19, and I don't know if you've heard, but the Edinburgh Festival's been cancelled.
Yeah.
Which is a huge economic deal for the city of Edinburgh. I can imagine that they will be welcoming you with open arms. I think the more things shot on location there, the better.
Yeah, I think also from an international perspective, and I mean, this show is coming, you know, sooner than others. We would love to work more with Scotland because everyone knows London, and everyone always thinks about the backdrops of London. And I think that all too often it's forgotten how much of the world loves the backdrop of Edinburgh. And you highlight the festival and however many people go through that. And I think it is something like the second or third biggest festival in the world now. And for the, you know, to have that point of difference from say London or a better known part of the UK actually adds so much to the production on its own, with the different buildings, the different look and feel. And I think we both agree that there is a lot more that can be done there. We'd love to do more there.
It's a stunning city. It would be an amazing place to film. Are you allowed to talk about timeline for the project? If there, and I know things are a little changeable at the moment, but you have a goal or an aim for when this will be filmed?
We do, Richard.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, so our ethos as a company in general is to, you know, fully understand what is going on is horrendous, but you know, the planning in production is long and detailed and needs to be thought of a long way in advance. And our sense is that you know, this is obviously, it is going to get better. We are going to be allowed outside again to live.
It will.
And we are going to be able to to produce shows again, and it's about being ready for that moment. And we always had in mind, after it became very apparent with the broadcaster that this was going to go ahead, to shoot this come sort of towards the end of Q1 next year. And I still say that that's very comfortable timings to be able to do that. I think, as you said earlier, the idea that Edinburgh is used as the backdrop to what will be a very high profile show with a high profile lead is great for the city of Edinburgh. And whether it's Edinburgh or other cities and towns around the UK that rely on tourism or single big events, that building up process again is going to be helped greatly by shows, and it happens that this one is Edinburgh, and we're very proud to be a part of it and to be shooting it in such a city that is very close to my heart. I love it up there.
That's awesome. And do you know, one of the very exciting things about setting a story in the actual place, I think, in terms of the world building, is what they see in Scotland with the Outlander effect. Mm-hmm. So it's not just the story itself, but all the ways you can access the story, and then the businesses that profit from that story too. So I think that's a really wonderful thing. I hope we get you guys started ASAP.
Can I say one other thing about all that? I'm slightly obsessed by voice, and I think places have their voice. And just to give an example of something else, we've recently sold a show to a major US streaming service that we're setting in Yorkshire. And it's in Yorkshire because the writer, who is a first-time screenwriter, a kind of very young female, but she's a playwright, female playwright. She lives in Yorkshire, and she wrote it in Yorkshire, and the voices she heard in her head were from Yorkshire. And we've paired her with Niels Ardenoplev, the director of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And suddenly, the voice from Yorkshire will be a very interesting voice, but we were insistent on that, and it was brilliant that we were able to sell it in the States with that, and then to bring it to the situation with Irvin. I mean, firstly, Irvin is one of the finest voices to come from Scotland in the last quarter of a century, and so it has to be in Edinburgh. But also, I think it's really important to get a sense of regional diversity, and therefore voice, and a sense of place. And we've wanted to get a connection with everything that we do. There needs to be a connection with the kind of psychogeography of something. And we're doing a number of Scottish pieces. Interestingly, we're working with Donna Francis-Child, who is an adopted Scot, and David Blair on a sequel to Taken Over the Asylum. 25 years on, what happened to them? And we haven't taken that anywhere just yet. We're dealing with some notes from David Tennant on it, and Ken Stott. But it was an important piece for both of those actors, and it was an important piece for Scotland. And so the question had never gone away for them as to what happened to Campbell and Eddie after all of that time. And so, and when I had the opportunity to work on it, it was just perfect, really. So we're working on that. We're working with Elizabeth McNeil, the novelist, first-time novelist of The Doll Factory, and Elizabeth grew up in Edinburgh. That's a London novel, but there's a lot of its roots are in Stevenson and whatever else. So we're very excited about Scotland between us.
That's so wonderful. I love all the literary ties too. I love the page to screen. That's something XpoNorth's a real champion on, and I think the shows that are the most successful in terms of the exporting from Scotland are ones that have literary ties. It's the city of literature, so I think that's really, really fantastic. So we don't have lots of time on the show. I wish I could keep you in these chairs for ages, but I think we're selfishly I would. But do you have any more advice or thoughts for folks out there? I know there's a lot of people at home right now aching to speak to people like you with ideas that have been cooking in their minds for ages about shows, or writers who are trying to work with authors or make it. Do you have advice for the creatives out there, especially in this time of quarantine, about maybe how to use it wisely?
Me?
Which one?
So I think we probably come at it from different angles, actually. So yes, I think if you think you have a great idea, I would say that the environment we're currently working in is outrageously competitive, and you can have an amazing idea that, if you remain on your own, could remain on its own. And reaching out to the likes of us is a good start point, in the sense that even though we are a small independent company, our reach is enormous, and our backing as well. And what we give in Tony is somebody who will, you probably hate me for saying this, but somebody who will wrap their arms around you and give you very generously the experiences that he's had through his career, as to shaping and bringing something to life that,
from a 2-meter distance, of course.
Obviously, from
wrap the elbows around you.
Yeah,
via Zoom. He will be very generous at pulling something together. But and then to the bit of the internationalization of what we do, it's almost impossible as a person on your own to be able to connect with the world that is out there now, in terms of bringing your show to life. And again, that's something that we can do. Obviously, we can't take on tons and tons and tons of projects, but my advice would be to, if it's not us, somebody else, to give you some scale, to give you some might and a name and a voice within the market, is very, very important at the moment, because without it, you would, I would say, have to be an incredibly well-known writer, or somebody who has delivered over many years in a certain part of the field. So if you're a younger aspiring writer, or for whatever you may be within the creative sphere, my suggestion would be to latch yourself onto somebody who gives you a bit of scale.
That's great. Stand on the shoulders of a giant.
Yes.
Can I say one other thing to that? I think it's always tough to get something away. Clearly, it's particularly tough right now, and you need to be precise. You need to know what you're doing, and nothing gets lost in rewriting. And if it becomes worse, go back to the draft you liked last. But rework and rework and rework. The people that I've worked with who are the best, they work the hardest. And I think it's really important to do that, and embrace every kind of block in your mind, and use that in order to make the idea better.
I think that's both really, really powerful bits of advice, because you can't do it on your own. You know, to Richard's point, you really, especially as writers, really have to figure out how to get partners in the business, or reach out to people who can then draw you out and put it out into the world. And Tony, to your point, reworking is so important. You know, we were speaking to a literary agent last week who said basically her best bit of advice is just patience. Like, don't send something out before it's ready. You're going to have to keep on reworking it and writing it. And you're quite right. You know, it's very difficult to break something creatively. You know, you can always go back. You can see the trail that led you to where you are. It's a malleable thing. So both of you, thank you so much, Tony and Richard. Those are excellent bits of advice for our XpoNorth audience, and good luck to everyone who's trying to get their work seen and out there. Can I ask,
thank you.
Are you a company that takes unsolicited scripts?
Kind of. Um,
Yeah.
the answer is yes, but every time I say yes, we get deluged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say yes after we've met.
Yes, that's a great.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. I think it's always important to give people a break, and so we always try to, but we've got a bit busy, really.
Well, that is a good thing. And you two seem like a powerhouse together. I'm very excited to see what you guys are cooking up and creating. And thank you very much
Thanks.
for joining us.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.